Amanda, and this is a Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Welcome to today's episode. I have Whitney of the French Fry Quilt Company. If you have not checked out her new online fabric and notion shop, you should. She's got some really cute stuff. I purchased a few things from her right when she got started, and I was so happy. Super fast delivery, great products. Anyway, if you haven't checked her out, go to frenchfryquiltco.com, and you can also find her on Instagram at French Fry Quilt Co. She again has just some of the cutest stuff. She just got started a few months ago, so go check it out. And in the meantime, while you're shopping, go ahead and give her a listen. It's that time for my shameless plug of Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/notyourgranny'squiltshow, you'll see that when you become a patron, you'll get a Not Your Granny's Quilt Show logo sticker sent right to your door. And exclusive to patrons, you get early access to the week's episode. So on Sundays instead of Mondays, you'll be able to listen to the latest episode. So head over to patreon.com/notyourgranny'squiltshow and check it out. Also, I just want to say thank you to those of you who have gone to YouTube, subscribed, got us over 400. So we had that amazing giveaway. Now our goal is to reach 50 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. So if you have not done so, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review and let everybody know what you think about the show. Once we hit 50, we're going to do an even bigger giveaway, 50 5-star reviews, that is. So head over to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, 5 stars if you will. That would be lovely. And we will get this giveaway on its way. And now on to the show. Well, welcome Whitney to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I started following you because I loved your Instagram handle, French Fry Quilter, and I I love French fries. I'm an Idaho girl, and I mean, I was born and raised here, but potatoes are my thing. So
Oh yeah, they're a lot of people's thing. It's kind of resonated with a lot of people. So French fries have just kind of always been a thing in my family. Like we would go to McDonald's on Saturday just to get fries, and I'd go with my sister sometimes. And it kind of just always stuck. And so when I got on Instagram, I was French Fry Runner, which I still have that handle as
mhm.
well, kind of for fitnessy stuff. And then I was like, well, I need somewhere to put all my crafting stuff. So I did French Fry Quilter.
Yeah, that's so fun. I love when people have clever or just like fun handles that stand out because it's like it just tells you a little bit about their personality without being like chaotic, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I just liked it. And then you opened your shop, so that was really fun to see and witness happening. But before we get into all that, let's go
Mhm.
back to the beginning. When did quilting come into your life, or how did you get into it?
Well, quilting came into my life, let's see, when I was about 17, I had like a church thing that I had to do, and I decided to make a quilt, and so I made a quilt. I sewed a bunch of, I think they were 10-inch squares together, and I was like, "This is super fun." And I didn't really know anything about it. My mom had taught me how to sew, so I knew how to sew
Mhm.
since I was about 8 years old. So I knew that, and so I knew my way around a sewing machine. So that wasn't too big a deal. And then I saw rag quilts. I thought those were
Oh
super
yeah.
cool. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. And so I did that. Just it was not really a rag quilt. It was kind of a disaster. But I still have it. And I proudly put it on my college dorm bed. And uh, the thing that was funny about it was I didn't cut all the little the seams enough.
Mhm.
So I had these like, I don't know, like half inch, uh, I don't know, little squares instead of like the nice, the nice fluffy seams on it.
Mhm.
And I didn't quilt it. I tried to tie it, and I was a lazy teenager, so I didn't tie it enough.
Oh.
And so all the batting fell, and the first time I washed it, so then I unpicked the seam. I didn't know how to do binding either, so I knew how to do facings
Mm.
from sewing clothing, and so I basically did a quilt with a facing, and I
Mhm.
didn't know how to close the seam either, so I hand sewed one whole side
Oh my
of
gosh.
the quilt. And it was a bed size quilt, so it was this twin size quilt, and I hand sewed like the whole side of it. So that was my start on quilting. Um, and then since it was a disaster, I was like, I don't know if I really liked it that much. And so I went back to sewing like clothing and like bags and things in college. I was a TA for their clothing construction class.
Mm.
And so I did that. And then I one day about 8 years ago, I was like, well, maybe I'll try quilting again because I was on the internet, I was on Pinterest, and I saw something I liked. I don't even remember which one it was. I learned what a jelly roll was, and kind of was hooked on that. And then I actually followed a tutorial, which was cool and helpful. So that time around, and then I sewed up my first quilt about 8 years ago, and
Wow.
after college and all that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I was hooked on that after that, and then over the pandemic slash the past couple years, I discovered quilt Instagram, and I was like, okay, here, these are my people. They're
Mhm.
quilt people, they're cat people.
Heck yeah.
This is where I'm at. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I started quilting.
That's crazy. It's so funny, like, how many people I talk to that are like, "Oh, yeah, I've sewn since I was a little kid," but, like, quilting wasn't, like, a thing until later on for them, and
Mhm.
that's how I was too, so except way later, like, I was, like, 32, but,
Mhm.
um, it was just funny, like, how it has kind of creeped into more, like, mainstream society, I guess,
Mhm.
because it always just seemed like, "Oh, church grannies do that," and, you know people have memories of growing up around their grandmas, like, quilting hoops and quilting frames and all that,
Mhm.
but, like, I didn't have that, and but it's just funny how, like, mainstream quilting is. It's like quilt coats are all the rage, quilt hoodies, quilt everything. It's like, they're being mass produced, and it's like, "No, no, no. We're not gonna let's not do this." It's the same thing with, like, mass produced, like, crochet things, 'cause like, they have not invented a machine that can mimic crochet. So
Mhm.
something's crocheted, it was handmade by someone in a sweatshop,
Mhm.
and I don't support that. But
I know, me neither.
it's funny how it's just like worked its way into like mainstream culture but it is still very much like a niche craft if you get into it. Like you have to really dig in. You can't just like do one.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. It's like they do that on purpose. No.
Mhm.
Um, well, it's funny because I learned how to crochet from my grandma. Um, so both my grandmothers crocheted, and then one of my grandmas, she made like yo-yo
Mhm.
quilts.
Yeah.
Like I have one of her quilts from when I was really little. Um, and she hand did all of that. So I always thought that that was really cool. And maybe part of me was just like, maybe quilting is not like attainable because I never was like, I know I'm not the only one, but my grandma didn't teach me how to quilt. I
Yeah.
had to find it on my own, really. And my mom didn't even quilt until she was, oh, I don't know, 50,
Yeah.
and she's 70 now. And so it just kind of wasn't a thing that was passed down. And it seems like there's like a resurgence of like millennials that are like, quilting's cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's 100% like why I started this podcast and
mhm,
like I, started the business with my mom. I'm like, "No, we gotta make this a thing." Like, cause same thing, my mom would, like, sew yo-yos with her grandma, and she has a yo-yo quilt from her grandma, but, like, that was really it. It wasn't, like, a family tradition, and so Yeah, it's funny that that's, like, coming up now, and, like, now we're passing on my little sister who's 22, like, she's kind of getting into learning how she moved back home, and we're like, "This is what we do all day, so you can hang out with us or, you know,
Mhm.
go do something else," and so she's, like, kinda slowly learning different techniques and how to sew and putting together her own stuff because she's like, "Well, I want aesthetic things for when I have my own place," and, like, she wants to make them, and she's always been crafty, but and my niece who's 10, like, she's starting to get into it with us, and so it's kind of, like, now becoming a family thing, but
Mm.
it's crazy just, like, where like, how gappy it can be for people, like, some people, yeah, they've had it their whole lives, they grew up with it, they learned from their grandmas, it was passed on from their grandma's grandma, they have that whole lineage, but for, a bunch of us millennials who jumped in the, 2018, 2020 kinda realm in between those years, it's like, for some reason, that was, like, a hotbed of quilting for millennials, especially, I'm finding.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. With my family, we all had different artsy things that we did.
Mhm.
My oldest sister, she's really talented seamstress. And
Mhm.
so she's made costumes for plays and all these different
Wow.
productions and things. And then my other sister, she is an artist, and so
Mm.
she makes art with different mediums, and she did like fiber art bags and things
Mhm.
like that, but never really quilting. My brother is a writer, so it's
Oh,
like we all
wow.
have these creative things that we were doing. My dad's a woodworker, or was a woodworker, and a master cross stitcher. So I did all those things, but quilting just never was a thing. And it's just really
Yeah.
weird now that I'm on the podcast and kind of encouraged to reminisce on it. It's interesting, and
Yeah.
you discover your own journey when you're trying to introduce yourself to another person. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's, like, funny because it's, like, if it's normal that everybody's just, like, crafty and a hobbyist, it's, like or, you end up doing it f for your career, your job, it's, like, you don't really think about it because it's just like, "Oh, that's just normal," but, yeah, it's, like,
Hmm.
it's funny the things that come up, like when you are sharing with someone new, like, "Oh, actually, yeah," like, all the connections you have, because 'cause I'm the same way, I just like, "Well, yeah, it's not really a thing," but then I'm like, "Well, my great grandma did, and then, like, my other grandma did this," and my it's like, "Oh, right,
Hmm.
okay." It's around, and, like, crochet was heavily in my family, like,
Hmm.
my my, great grandma on my dad's side, his dad's mom, she would crochet like, my mom still has all these, like, little Afghan, like, for baby dolls, and, like, she would take the bodies of baby dolls and, like, crochet clothing around them, but then, like, an attached, like, little blanket to, like, swaddle them in. So
Hmm.
I, like, have all these things, and I'm like as I look back through my childhood things, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, there's, like, all this crafty crochet yarn," and, like, I mean, even not quilts per se, but, like, sewn blankets that,
Hmm.
like so I'm like, "Oh, I've always been surrounded by it," but it's just, like, not wasn't, like, a passed down thing, so it's, like, interesting to, like to learn how people found their way to it. Because sometimes, yeah, like we were saying, it is passed down, and sometimes it's just, like, you're just in a world of craftiness all the time, and you're just willing to explore new things, and it's cool, and it's fun that, like to look back on your first things and go, that was kinda hot garbage," but, like, to get to see your journey of how far you've come in that span of time is, like, so fun. So, that's really
Yeah, it's so fun. Well, I think it's interesting that, like, just like you were saying, like the millennial group that we found a new hobby that was just kind of ours. For me, it was just kind of an escape of
Mhm.
something, like, of my day to day, and I found a lot of joy in cutting up fabric and cutting it and putting it back together. Like,
Yeah.
for some reason, that's my favorite part, is literally cutting up this pristine, yard of fabric, and just making it into something new and cozy and something I can use every day. Because when I made clothes, they generally, you made it for a reason and you wore it once, and then you don't
Yeah.
really, unless you really love it. And I didn't have anything I really loved. They all had just kind of one purpose,
Mm,
and I was done, you know?
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, it's like a more practical kind of thing, and I think as you're saying that, like, yeah, it was for a lot of the millennial quilters who didn't have it passed down in their family. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna be this like crafty person instead of because they're, it's like DIY is like the big, has been the big thing for a while, especially in this generation of like, we're gonna make carve our own path because what was handed to us was garbage and we need to make something beautiful from it. Like
true.
things boomers. But the just that idea that, like, we can reinvent it and make it our own so that it feels relevant to our lifetime, our lifestyle is, like a common theme I'm seeing throughout people I've talked to and interviewed and experienced, and it is interesting to see how that's come about and coming together because there's so much beautiful stuff out there and, traditional ways and quilting is beautiful, and it's, like, great history to preserve, but it's also like, okay, but also we need to make it so that it can be carried into what the existence that we have to live in now. Like, not people can't just have giant quilt frames in their homes and sit around stitching for hours because that's just
Mhm,
not how our society runs anymore. It's like this hustle culture is like it it takes away from that, but being able to sit down at a sewing machine for, 30 minutes to even an hour a day, if that's all you can muster, is, like, something that a lot of people can do and have, a small space carved out for them in their day to do that and
mhm.
make something beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's great to with the hustle culture, it's nice to have that little tiny escape
Mhm,
every day, every other day, once a week, where
mhm,
it's just your time. You've decided to do this one thing. So what with us, it's quilting. With others, it's being out in your garden.
mhm,
It's going for a run. Things like that. Because we're always encouraged to hustle and do more and all that. It's nice for us to have that little escape
mhm.
every day. Like I said, every day, once a week,
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Well, and it does even though, modern tools and modern technology make it a little faster because 'cause we're not hand sewing everything, but, like, it still takes time. You still have to slow down. You have to think about what you're doing. There's a lot of quilty math involved, which slows a lot of people down, but
Mhm,
it's ultimately kind of a way to just pause everything else and focus on this one thing and just getting creative every day. Yeah, like even if it is just like a little bit of time, but if you're carving out that time to allow yourself to make something and, like you said, you love cutting up a pristine yard. That always gives me so much anxiety because I'm like, it's so beautiful. I don't want to cut it up. I mean, I know I have to, but
sure.
it's part of that process of like destruction before reconstruction before you make something beautiful from it. And there's creativity in all of it, and just giving yourself that time is, like, priceless. Because yeah, that slowdown is what our bodies and our brains need, so it's important in whatever it is, like you said, running, gardening, going out in the hills or
Mhm,
being near water or just nature in general, I guess, because all those things are nature related, but
mhm, for sure.
but whatever it is, just giving yourself permission to slow down for a little bit, I think is needed, and I think that's where these DIY kind of or handmade hobbies, I think that's where people are craving that slowdown is, they're looking for these things to help them do that, and so I love it.
Mhm,
It's really been it's been good for a lot of things, but yeah, it's a fun thing to do.
mhm.
So you've just been quilting as like a hobby? You weren't were you doing quilts for other people or just making them for yourself mostly?
Making them for myself mostly, and my family,
Mhm.
really. I have 15 nieces and nephews, so yeah, I have a pretty big family, and so, um, well, the goal is to make a quilt for every one of them. That
Yeah.
has not happened. Because
That's
we
a
all
lot.
have stuff that we need to finish. We all have that stack of works in progress that we have.
Yep.
So I have about, 4 of them made,
Yeah.
out of 15. And, my oldest niece is 30, so it's it's a work in progress. But basically, yes, I made them for myself, mostly in my family. I've had a couple people ask me for commissions, but that's kind of stresses me out, and I don't have to. I mean, I don't like to be stressed. I left a very stressful job
Mhm.
that I was in, and so I don't have time for that. So
Yeah.
not right now, anyway.
Yeah.
Long answer to a short question. Yes, I make quilts for myself mainly and my family.
Yeah. Well, when you have that many family members, it kind of becomes a job almost.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
okay, next one.
yeah, for sure. And really, like I said, I have made a handful.
Yeah.
You know, so for my family, if you're listening, I'm really sorry. At some point, you'll get a quilt someday. I don't know when, but it's happening.
Yeah. You're like, you're on my list.
Yeah, you're on my list. You're really important. I promise. But yeah, my family, we're not very timely in gift giving in
Mm,
general, so it's not a surprise
yeah.
for any of my family
Well, that's
that
good.
yeah, I owe my sister, who actually I'm seeing tomorrow, I owe her a quilt for her birthday about 5 years ago.
Oh.
So it's cut out, it's not put together,
Mm.
and I think I may change. It has some very old Bonnie and Camille fabric
Oh.
when that
Mhm.
was super popular.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I think it is still
Well,
popular. I just am not really in that realm of
yeah.
kind of more traditional.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's cut out. But I think I might change it completely now. So now it's like, what am I going to do with what I cut up? But anyway, it's coming, but it's not coming tomorrow.
You're like, still not done, sorry.
Still not done, sorry. Well,
Yeah.
she was very lovely and she made me a quilt. She doesn't quilt very much. Like I said, she's a seamstress,
Mm,
a former seamstress, but
mm,
she does make quilts for like easy quilts for family and stuff. So she made me this lovely jelly roll race quilt
mhm.
for my birthday several years ago with some Sarah Watts cat lady fabric, and it's
Oh,
my favorite ever.
oh my
And
gosh.
it's right there.
Oh,
This one.
yeah,
So anyway, it's
cute.
yeah, it's my favorite fabric ever. So you know, so she quilts too, but not as much as me. I'm kind of obsessed with it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so cool. Yeah, it's fun when it's a gift you can give because 'cause you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna make somebody this amazing thing," but then it's like, "Oh, right, this is a lot of work." Like,
yeah,
especially when there's deadlines, and I mean, I make quilts for people all the time because it's my job, but
hmm
and the deadlines are tough sometimes because it's like things sometimes don't come together or it's like maybe you start and you realize your plan is not going to work out and it's like okay we have to go back to the drawing board and I just experienced that with a client quilt. I had to rip out so much embroidery
Oh shoot.
and then redo. I know it was crazy. I was like, oh my god, this is so annoying, but it looks so much better. Like I'm glad I did it and read like I had embroidered a phrase on in the center of the quilt that the lady wanted and it just it did not look good, and I sent it to her. I was like, "I hate this, and I'm gonna redo it." And she was like, "Okay." So I just did applique letters, but anyway, that's beside the point. It just like, again, back to that hustle culture idea, it's like, "Okay, here's a time frame. Now you have to make this custom thing." It's like, it's so hard in that realm because then it's like, got Etsy barking down your throat. It's like, "You should have shipped this 8 days ago." I'm like, "I know, but I can't ship it because it's not done yet." Like,
Right.
there's like there's so many things in place that are, like, meant to help creative people, like, do what they're doing, but it's also, like, still very embroiled in hustle and capitalism, and, like,
Yep.
there's, like there's no space for like, needing to go back and rework something or, like, the ebbs and flows of custom work, but anyway, that's beside the point.
Oh, for
Um
sure.
um, I was gonna ask you go back to you
Mhm.
and not me. Um,
Mhm.
so okay, so you said your oldest niece is 30, which is like blows my mind because my oldest niece is 13. But
Mhm. Yeah.
also it seems like there might be a pretty big gap with you and your siblings. How many siblings do you have? And like what are the age differences?
Well, I have 3 siblings. I have 2 sisters and a brother. I have a sister that's 8 years older than me, a brother that's 11 years older, and, a sister who's 14 years older than me.
Okay,
So,
so you're the baby.
I'm the baby slash yeah, I mean, I am the baby, yes, but
Mhm.
I also kinda raised as, like, an only child because there was such a big gap.
Mhm.
So I'm like this weird hybrid only child baby,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
Like my siblings will say, Whitney's so spoiled and or was,
Mhm.
back in the day. Um, but also it's like, well, I'm the only one home. You haven't been home for, 15 years. So,
Right, I know.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, so big gap, but not I don't have that many siblings, but each one of them I don't have any children,
Mhm.
but each of them has my brother has 2 kids, one of my sisters has 3 and my oldest sister has 5.
Oh
So
my gosh.
so
Okay.
yeah. So my oldest niece is 7 years younger than me. Um so I guess she's almost 30, she's 29.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there and I have grandnieces and nephews too. So
Oh my gosh.
I know. So it's kind of crazy and then I'm like, "Hi, I don't have any kids."
I know.
So
Yeah. I have stepsons, but it's like I'm not having my own and
mhm,
it's the way I wanted it. But and
for
I'm the
sure.
oldest, so
Oh,
it's
wow, okay.
it's kind of like my boys are 22 and 18 and seems so old, but at the same time I'm like, well, if I was just like a really young mom, like it could have been real,
Oh,
but
yeah.
then my sister's 22. She's 15 years younger than me, so it's like and
Mhm.
she's the baby, so my younger brother is I have 2 brothers in the middle, but the youngest one is, like, 4.5 years older than her, so the older 2 of the 2 brothers is here in town, and, he's the one with the kids. I feel cool having, niece and 2 nieces and a nephew, but yeah, like, having one that's, like, so close to you in age, and but I'm, like, so close in age to, like, my mom's siblings because her youngest brother was 10 when I was born, so it's like, there's all these, like, crazy age gaps, but also, like, closeness in my family in age,
Mm.
so it's like the lines are blurred. I'm like
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Yeah, and it's interesting because on my side of the family, everyone's older because
Mhm,
I'm the youngest, but on my husband's side, he's the oldest, and
mhm.
all the nieces and nephews on his side are all, I don't know, normal
Yeah.
age for my age right
Yeah,
now,
right.
So they're all, the oldest on that side, 3rd grade,
Mm,
something. I don't actually know, but definitely younger.
yeah.
Where my youngest nephew on my side, not grandnephew or anything, he's 18,
Oh my
right? And
gosh.
so then the oldest is well, maybe she's in 5th grade. I don't know.
Yeah, like 8 or 10 around that age.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's so funny. Yeah, like, my cousins are all, like, in their early 20s and younger. So, like, they're like, "That's my cousin." They're like, "Wait, you're not my aunt, right?" I'm like, "No, I'm your cousin." Like, they're just, like, a whole separate thing. It's, like, so funny, but
yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
they do know, like, they can come to me and my mom, and they're like, we need a quilt now." We're like, "Okay."
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it's good, but
That's good. That's good that they have that resource there.
yeah, they know or they're like, can you fix my pants?" I'm like, "Ugh, no." I mean, yes, but no.
You're like, "Yes, but I'd prefer not."
Ask my mom, she can do it. They're like, "Yeah, Michelle." Like,
There you go.
she's the one who sews clothes, not me. I destroy them if I try, so it's fine.
Oh. I'm extraordinarily type A, so I when I do sew clothes, it takes me forever, and even if the seam isn't seen, I have to make sure it's perfect, and
Mhm.
so I had a lot of years where I did sew clothes, and so, I kinda had this love-hate relationship with sewing, I would say, until quilting came along, so
Yeah, yeah,
besides the one quilt when I was 17, 18. So
yeah, yeah. I think it's just a different beast, like, with clothing because it has to fit a body, like
Mhm.
And so if the seams aren't right or if it's not pressed right or, it's like gonna lay funny, it's gonna look weird. And
Mhm.
it's like other people might not notice it, but when you're wearing it, like, like this seam is wonky and it feels weird on my body. It's crooked and I hate it.
I know, exactly. Well, and it's so stressful because I mean, I would never be a professional seamstress or anything like that because the cool thing about humans is bodies change, right?
Yeah.
So if I were like a wedding dress, tailor,
Yeah.
alteration lady, um, I would just I don't know, like I can't be trusted with that level of stress and responsibility
Yeah.
for like a wedding dress to fit during the fitting and
Mhm.
then also at the last fitting and think about what I need to put into the dress to take in, let out, all that stuff. That little extra leeway that just hurts my brain. I
I know.
on
Yeah.
anything really. Like I think of um, you know, like fashion week fashion designers, right? That,
Yeah.
basically sew their models into the clothing. I
Yeah.
couldn't even.
It's like, "No, thank you. I'll do not that." Like, I'll sew so many things, but not that.
Exactly. I guarantee my quilt can fit anyone. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Exactly. And if the seams aren't perfect, you can just fudge it and just quilt it really cute and nobody will know.
Yeah, like they say, it'll quilt out. And really, one of my favorite things is like if you run past it, if there's a quilt and you run past it and you can't notice anything that's wrong with it, then you're fine.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
person you're giving it to does not care. They
No.
don't care, you know, so you shouldn't care either.
Exactly. And most of the time, like, the mistakes that we see as the quilter, no one else ever sees. Like,
Never.
I mean, there's still stuff on my own quilts that I'm like, "Oh, I didn't realize I, like, missed that seam right there, or I missed
Mhm.
that those points don't line up," or it's something that's like, if you can obviously not, like, give up and be a crappy quilter, but, like, just relax enough to, like, not fret over things being exactly perfect for your own self. Because I think if you're doing it for other people, that's a different story, but then, it's like you're making something cool, it's unique, it's yours, you get to snuggle under it, and who cares if there's a couple mistakes, like, the point is to make something cool and not, like, be so perfectionist about it that you lose the value of it overall.
Well, absolutely. Well, and 2, we're not machines, so
Yeah,
they're even on the quilt that we took the most time with, that we tried to match up absolutely everything. Even if you don't see a mistake, there's a mistake in that quilt,
yeah,
guaranteed.
yeah.
And because we're not a machine, we're not gonna have perfect everything. It's
Mhm.
totally fine. It's okay not to be perfect. It's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah. Sometimes the joy is in the construction of it, even if the thing at the end is not perfect according to like what I think is perfect or what I think is great.
yeah,
That's okay. Whatever you think is great and perfect, I may not, and it's fine. It's our own thing and we can own it and
yeah.
be and learn to be happy with it. I'm a
Mhm.
very much a perfectionist in most areas of my life, and so
Me too.
quilting is weirdly the one thing I can just be like, I'm okay. It's
Mhm.
fine. The quilt is done. It looks great. I'm gonna send it to my long armor because honestly, I can't be bothered with quilting it on my machine can't take it. I would do it more, but I have my machine that I got. Oh, I don't know. It's like 14 years old. It's like
Oh,
this
okay.
Kenmore machine that is, it's a workhorse. It's a,
Yeah.
metal frame kind of thing,
Mhm.
but it just can't handle home quilting. So I have a few long armor friends and I just send it to them. And at the end, you have this gorgeous, quilted, lovely thing. And
Yeah,
I think that's fun. It's just a beautiful thing that we can all do. And I think just as women, we can be okay with it. We can be okay with what we make.
yeah,
So and it's a journey for sure.
yeah, yeah. It's funny, like back to looking at, your work from earlier on, it's like you can see, like, your progression of, like, not giving a shit anymore. Like
Basically, yeah.
like, letting go and just making the damn quilt,
Mhm.
and honestly, I think the for me at least, and I don't know if it speaks for anybody else, but just, like, I was so neurotic about, like, I my first quilts, like, the seams are popping because I was so worried about losing fabric in the seams and, like,
Mhm.
even though it was like, "Oh, I cut it all correctly, I did it I cut the seam allowances in," but I was, like, so stressed about losing fabric because I've always been obsessed with fabric and I'm spending all this money on the fancy fabric that I want, rifle paper,
Mhm.
and, like, all these things I've been obsessed with all this time, Tula and, um but now it's like, "Oh, I see," I could quickly see why it was an issue because they those seams started popping very early because I was using my quilts, washing them, drying
Mhm.
them, using them, and I was like, "Oh, shoot, okay." So then it's like then I, like, overcorrected and was doing, like, too big of seam allowance because I'm like, "Well, I don't want my seams to come apart," and so you can kinda
Mhm.
see that in some quilts, like, it's just interesting to see, like, your own evolution through your quilting, like, by looking back at your quilts and, like, my binding looked like shit on my first quilts, like
My binding still looks like shit, you're fine. I just
I
wanna
mean
get the damn thing over with,
yeah,
and so I
yeah,
literally just zoom
yeah,
through binding, and the first time I watch it, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is it gonna pop?"
yeah,
There's some quilts that I need like, I'm looking at them right now, I'm like,
yeah,
"Yeah, don't look at the binding." Like, the quilt itself is fine, but
yeah,
I need to redo the binding, and am I going to? Probably not.
I
Not
know,
soon. Don't care that much.
I know, and, like, my very first quilt, I sleep with that on my bed, like, every night, and so that binding is literally coming off, so I'm just gonna machine sew it back on because I can't be bothered to hand sew it, but
For sure.
and I just that's I do, I machine bind my all my own quilts because I just like, hand stitching the binding looks beautiful, and if you have the patience to sit and do that, then that's great, but I just don't, and so for client quilts, if that's something they want, then I'll do it, you know? It's like
Mhm.
you're a service is being, asked of me, and that's fine, like, I can do that, but for my own, I'm like, "Ugh, no, just" I know because I know I'm gonna use my quilts hard too, like,
Well, sure, yeah.
they're on the sofa, they're in my guest room, they're on my bed, they're in my living room, it's like they're everywhere in my house and they're all used for everything. It's like
Mhm.
I want them to stay together because I'm finding out obviously like that my early quilts are falling apart because I didn't do those things. I didn't
Mhm.
secure my seams very well. I didn't secure my bindings very well. And so it's one of those things where it's like, it's okay to see your evolution and it's okay to like still cherish those quilts and make
Yeah,
mistakes because you have to kind of make those mistakes to figure it out. And your quilts are never going to be exactly perfect. And like just yeah, slowly watching yourself progress over that like what you care about in the quilting. Like, first it was I didn't want to lose fabric. Then it was, you know, oh, I need to make sure my seams are in. And now it's like, okay, I'm gonna actually follow the directions.
I know I have a
And
bad habit of that sometimes now, where I look at a pattern and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's yeah, I can see how they made it, sure." And
yeah,
then I try to make it on my own and I'm like, "Oh, why does this not look?" And it's like, "Winnie, you bought the pattern for the pattern. Why don't you read it?"
yeah,
So you can save yourself so much time of unpicking stuff.
right.
So, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, is it close enough that I don't care? Where am I using this?
Mhm.
So I sometimes I get a little cocky, which I shouldn't. I should always listen to the pattern designer because they made it for a certain purpose. So I
Mhm.
pattern test, right? And so I'm like, you know how to read a pattern, genius. Why don't you do it with your own quilts? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like one of those shortcut things like, "Oh, I figured this out. I know how to make this. I'm gonna just go for it." And then, yeah, realizing like, maybe I should go back to the directions because
Exactly. Because then you missed a line and you're like, oh, crap.
yeah,
That
like
is why. So it's like you have 2 blocks that are completely weird and they should be lining up, and it's like, well, it's because you should have sewn this piece onto the other side and then
mhm.
flipped it around.
Yeah. Yeah.
idiot, you know?
Yeah. You're like, "Wow, okay, cool. I probably should read things." Yeah, I do the same thing, so
Yeah.
it's it's a gift, I think. No.
I think yeah, it's a gift to ignore directions. Yes, for sure. No, it's very interesting because it's like, okay, you know, if you read the directions, it will take you this much time. It will take you, you know,
Right.
3 hours to make the whole thing, right? You
Mhm.
don't read the directions. It takes you 2 nights and 10 hours, and you're like, this is just a jelly roll quilt. Like, why is it, you know? And
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I've had some experience like that where actually on one of my pattern tests that I
Mhm.
completely sewed something completely wrong like 4 different times, and I'm like, I don't have enough fabric to fix this. What is the issue? Yeah, I totally missed a line,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so yikes.
Yeah,
But
I'm
we
like,
all do it,
"Okay."
which is kind of nice. It's kind of like that community of, you know, you come together in misery kind of
Right.
thing. Like we
Yeah.
can all relate to each other,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah. You can commiserate about the mistakes we've all made in quilting, and
Yeah.
it's okay because everybody does it every once in a while, and
Yeah,
you're
we
not
still do
alone.
it. We
Yeah.
still do it. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a procrastinator too, so
Yeah.
yeah, right. Oh, that's a cool mug, by the way.
Oh, thank you. This is my boyfriend.
Love it.
My husband hates it, but no, he doesn't. He just gets mad that I say it's my boyfriend
Oh,
because I
yeah.
love Jack Skellington.
Jack Skellington's pretty rad.
He's my
Yeah,
fave.
I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks. So, when did you get into pattern testing? Because I was testing patterns for Caterina Rochella for a little while, and then I had to pull
cool.
back because I'm so busy. But um, yeah, like I loved it. So, how did you get into it, and when did you decide that's something you wanted to do?
Really, this past year, so in March, I left a job that had
Mm,
been very stressful for about 6 years, and I needed to do something. I needed just because I was go, 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 hustle, hustle, be on call all the time, all that stuff
mhm,
just does not suit. I don't recommend it for anybody. People say that they thrive on stress. I was one of those people. Actually, I
mhm.
thrive when I can do the things on my own time and complete them.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so I started pattern testing when I didn't have anything to do.
Mhm,
So, I was like, "Okay." So I made a couple friends on Quiltstagram,
mhm.
and they let me know how they got into it, and I
Mm,
just kinda scoured Instagram for hashtag pattern testers needed or whatever, and
yeah,
I was lucky enough to be chosen to do that, and, um, you know, there are many differing, opinions on pattern testing and being paid and all that stuff, but really for me, I just needed something to do. I had the fabric and I just needed the patterns to do because I was like, "I'm
yeah.
gonna get back into quilting because I had done it at this job
Mhm,
sporadically, um, for the past 8 8, 10 years, whatever.
mhm.
But I was like, I just need something to do. I need the patterns if,
Yeah,
I need practice. So that's
yeah.
kind of how I got into it. I just signed up on, Instagrammers that I actually, kind of resonated with. I didn't just do it for absolutely anyone.
Right.
Um, so that's kind of it. Pattern tested, a handful over the past since about April, I would say. And so that's
Mhm,
kind of how I got into it. I haven't yet, made a pattern for a quilt shop. We don't really have quilt shops really close by, and the
mm,
ones that we do have, they have like their people
mhm.
that
Yeah,
do their stuff, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Cool. Yeah, I thought it was such a fun experience, and, like, I grew so much from doing it, just, like, seeing all the behind the scenes and, like, understanding how patterns come together for writers, and it's it's kinda cool too to see that, like, a lot of, you know, the writers, they have kind of like a set set of lingo or,
Hmm.
the way that they scaffold things or put things into diagrams. It's like, it's consistent across the board for them, and so, um, I think it, like, made me appreciate the ones who learn from their testers and improve the process based
Mhm,
on, the comments that people give or and but also stay true to themselves in it. And then, you can get familiar with that person's writing style and get comfortable with it. And the more you
mhm,
work on their patterns, the easier it is to work through them because you're used to how they're laid out. And that was kind of fun for me to see that and but also learning a bunch of new skills that I never really had tried yet and um just feeling encouraged to try because it's like, well, it's a test. It's not like a not for anybody except for me and to
mhm,
help this person out. And
mhm.
um yeah, I've heard people, the controversy with people thinking, you should be paid if you're testing a pattern, but also people are just like, no, it's just for fun. You don't have to if you don't want to, you don't have to test these patterns. And I definitely did it for free and used my own fabric and purchased fabric for it. But it's like, it's my quilt. And I got a free pattern. So
Mhm.
I wanted to make a quilt anyway, and I was going to make it for myself no matter what it was. So I don't know. I think I can see both sides of the argument and
Mhm.
I can understand if that's something you do as a big part of your quilty business, yeah, work it out with people who are willing to compensate you, I guess. But anyway, that's interesting.
Sure. Well, and it's also like a small quilter making patterns and a company that
Right.
wants you to do something for them,
Right.
pay them to, you know, be able to do something for them,
Yeah.
all these ambassadorships and stuff. I don't really
Yeah.
like to, get into the drama and stuff of it,
Yeah.
but I mean,
No.
I can see both sides of the story,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's my story that I'm telling, so
Right.
I'm okay with pattern testing. And in a former life, I was a nonfiction editor, and
Oh, okay.
so I being able to edit something for fun, like, I'm all over that,
Yeah.
so and then I get a quilt for doing it, like,
Yeah.
cool, I get to, check for style and spelling and math
Mhm.
and all the stuff that I did, so it's
Yeah.
kind of just like yeah, and again, I get a cool out of it at the end, like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Because any editing I do now, my husband's an engineer, and so any editing I do
Oh.
now, it's engineering jargon, quilt
Yeah.
jargon, engineering jargon. Like, which one would I rather read all day? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So is the nonfiction editing what you left?
No, actually, I was assistant general manager for a retailer,
Mm.
sporting goods retailer in the
Okay.
Bay Area.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we
Okay.
just parted ways. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was for 6 years, and then before that, for about 10, I was an editor in various forms: nonfiction editor, acquisitions editor, managing editor,
Wow.
um, copy editor, all the editors, all the editor hats. I did it from college until we moved out here to California, which is where I am now. So
Okay.
yeah.
Wow, interesting. It's always fun to hear what people do behind the scenes, behind their quilting or came into quilting from. It's so interesting because yeah, there's just so many and it's a lot of people have technical backgrounds you're nonfiction editing, you're not reading people's stories, it's
Yeah, which is really I'm one of the people, I don't know, when you get into editing, like if you're in this, you're in school for it and people, they're like they want to find the next big author,
Mhm.
but I was actually just more interested in academic and cookbooks and how-to guides and all that
Yeah.
stuff. That's kind of my cup of tea because I'm pretty scientifically minded, I would say. My degree is in linguistics, and so
Mm.
soft science type of stuff, and so
Yeah.
I'm more interested in that versus I love literature, don't get me wrong, but I want
Yeah.
to read the book to read the book and the story.
Mhm.
I don't like to I'd like to say I'm an excellent editor, but I w don't wanna rip a fiction book to pieces, So
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
can as an editor, but I don't want to. I want to just
Right.
read the book. Whereas it's for me, for nonfiction, because it's more on the technical side, it's easy to kind of separate yourself. Like if this, diagram doesn't make sense, then actually the product or the end game is going to be wrong for a person who is trying to make it.
Right.
So that's kind of
Yeah.
why I like pattern testing as well, because I like to do that. And then I got into sporting goods and stuff because I'm also a yoga teacher and running coach. And so after I left editing and moved out here to California, I was like, okay, I'm a
Yeah.
little burned out, but of editing, because speaking of the grind, you don't
Yeah.
ever like work. No one likes working for 70 hours a week. So,
No.
and I'm like, not a doctor. Like
Mhm.
people are not dying, because I didn't meet or did meet this deadline.
Right.
Um, so then I switched over and worked for a small running store because I'm a running coach. And so,
Mhm.
and then I worked at a different one. I kept, climbing the ranks and stuff of that because I just cannot be stopped. So like I have to just grind constantly. That's just, what my parents taught me. You just work hard all the time.
Yeah.
Which is good. But I kind of got off the rails a little bit. So
Yeah. It's
yeah.
easy. I think when you set your sights on achievement, it's, like, so easy to get lost in the sauce, like, and
Yeah.
forget that, like, "Oh, I need to, like, rest. I need to give myself a break. I need to take some time because it's like yeah, I'm the same way. It's like, "Nope, high achiever, gotta achieve, gotta climb, gotta be the
Hmm.
best." It's like that oldest child kind of syndrome, and
Hmm.
maybe for an only child situation, quote, unquote, like you said,
Hmm.
for you, like, yeah, I have to achieve and, it's like if you're not well in the process, then what's it for? Like,
Right.
when you have nothing but health problems and emotional, mental health issues that keep coming up, like, is it really worth it just
Yeah.
to say, like, "Oh, I worked 70 hours a week and ignored my family and my friends and didn't build anything for myself so that I'm happy?" It's like it's crazy. And when you
Yeah.
stop and step back, I'm like, "I can never go back to that again. Never."
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's weird because I hopped from one, so publishing,
Yeah,
to management, and it's, in a retail chain,
yeah,
basically. Um, I was in charge of one of the stores, but yeah, like
yeah.
the funny thing is I started and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna work on the floor, help people. Maybe I'll do the register sometime. But then I was just like, at a certain point, I was like, well, I'm kind of done with this. So I'm going
Mhm.
to climb because things are more interesting up there.
Right.
Um, so, so then that happened and, got off the rails. And
Yeah,
then, then I was like, I was given an opportunity to leave and I did. And, um, I think it's the best thing that's ever happened, really. Because the thing that I no, my previous job was not great for my relationships and all that.
mhm,
Is my husband, he was like, you laugh all the time now.
mm,
You didn't used to do that. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm reclaiming a bit of who I was and who we married and all that stuff that
yeah,
was lost. Because I'd like
yeah,
to think that I'm a boisterous and happy kind of person,
mhm,
and I was not. So,
mm,
yeah, and so then I didn't wanna go back to that, and so then that's why I opened my own quilt shop.
yeah. So was that just, like is that something you've kind of been thinking about in, like, among everything, or was it just, like, a eureka moment? Or yeah, how did that come about? Because you just opened recently, just a few months ago, right?
Mhm. Well, yes, so I had been kinda thinking about at some point in the future. I went to lunch with my yoga mentor, for, it sounds, new agey and stuff, but I went out to lunch with her because I took her yoga teacher training certification,
Mhm,
and went out to lunch with her, and she said, "Hey, what in your life she always asks really good questions. She's like,
Mm,
"In your life, what do you see yourself doing
mm,
in 10 years and 15, 20, 30 years? What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, I'd like to be a yoga teacher and a quilt, like a long armor, a shop owner kind of thing."
mhm.
And so that's kind of always been in the back of my head of something I wanted to do. I don't have room for a long arm. If I did, I would totally be on top of that, but I do not. So,
Yeah.
um, because that just anyone who does that is incredible. So when I left my job earlier this year, I was just like, and I was looking for other stuff to do. I'm like, okay, what am I qualified for? Okay, there's editing jobs, there's manager jobs, there's administrators and all that kind of stuff. And I was just
Mhm,
like, man, I don't want to do any of that. So, what do I want to do? And so I was like, well, what if I just open a little quilt shop so I
mhm.
can, pay for the pretty fabric that I want to use and
Yeah.
spread the fabric love, I guess, to the quilty sphere. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, what if I do that? I'll give it, and I was just like, I'll give it a few months. I'll see how it goes. I can always, I can always knock 75% off of stuff and sell it off and close. And,
Yeah.
no one's the wiser, if it doesn't work out and I don't like it.
Mhm.
So I did it. I gave it a shot. Right. And
Yeah.
so I spent a couple months ordering and working on the website and stuff
Yeah.
like that and trying to figure it out. I'm still troubleshooting. So if anybody who's listening and I make a mistake on your order, I'm really, really sorry. I'm still learning how to do it for my own personal little shop instead of on a large scale. So trying
Yeah.
to trying to figure that out. But yeah, so that's how it came to be. I was just given an opportunity to kind of go for my goal earlier
Yeah.
than when I expected to. So I just went for it. Um,
Yeah.
took that risk, which is really weird for me because I'm not really a risk taker
Mhm.
per se. Like I'll
Mhm.
do scary things, that's fine, but I'm never just like, okay, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna, put up the money and just do that. I'm very trying to be judicious and uh with
Yeah.
that. But and chatting with my husband and he's like, go for it. He's like, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, so tried to do that
Yeah.
and
I
French
think
Fry Quilt Company just seemed natural.
yeah, I love it. It's perfect. And I mean, I placed an order pretty early. I got the Batty Bats kit and
Oh, yay, cool.
I think I got a sticker. Yeah, I got the one that said quilt bitch and put it on my machine.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and I mean, I got super fast shipping. It was super good. So I mean, I haven't experienced any hiccups.
Whew. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
No,
that's good.
yeah, I love what you've got and I think it's fun that like that we have e-commerce because people can provide exactly what they want to provide. You don't feel the need to fill up a building full of
Right.
stuff. You can just carry the stuff that you want to carry and that you want to
Mhm.
provide and the businesses that you want to support by you know, selling their products and I think you've got a well curated shop and everything is so cute and it all feels cohesive. Like it's not like sporadic. Like some quilt shops, I feel like you go in and you're like, why? Like you want a range of things, you want a range of fabrics and products and things, but sometimes it just feels overwhelming and like there's no rhyme or reason to why certain things are there. And
Mhm.
so when you can like experience a shop, whether it's online or in person, that feels cohesive, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, thank you. It's like a resting, calming, experience for my brain. And my crazy anxiety, ADHD brain needs that so bad sometimes.
That's good. That's
So
good. Glad to hear that.
yeah. So I think
Yeah.
from what I can tell, like it looks really good from this end. And, I'm hoping people if they haven't heard about your shop yet, they're hearing this, that they come flock to you because you do have such cute stuff. And I'm I'm, planning a new order soon, so that'll be fun.
Yay, well, that's
Excited.
exciting.
Yeah.
They everyone has seen those TikToks, when the one order comes in to a new business owner, it's like, the clouds part and it's like,
Yeah.
it's true, you guys. It's really true. We're very excited about that. Occasionally something takes off and you do sell a lot.
Mhm.
I've only been open for a few months, so that's only happened with like the starry pre-order, you
Oh
know what I
my
mean?
gosh, yeah.
Um, but other days when someone buys literally, I had one person buy one sticker yesterday, and I was like, "Yes!"
Yeah.
And it's really exciting, and I create most of the stickers, there's a
Mhm.
French Fry Quilt Company stickers, and then I curate other stickers from folks that, kinda resonate with me because I
Mhm.
want everything to be fun and happy and, you
Yeah.
know I have, some food related fabric that's gonna come in, like, that's super cute,
Yes.
like, that's my vibe, and,
Yeah,
I saw something somewhere that was just like, your people will find you.
absolutely.
Just be authentic. Don't try to be everything to everyone,
Yeah, yeah,
if you like a thing, people who like the thing also will find you at some point. They're gonna make some, some internet search and they're gonna find your store.
yep,
So, you know,
yep,
it happens.
yeah,
And again, I'm a teeny tiny little, newbie here in the quilty sphere. Selling sporting goods is a whole lot different than selling fabric. So learning
yeah,
that there's different things for different niches. Like there's different marketing and like what kind of marketing should I do? And oh, I'm the one that's doing it. I don't have somebody doing it for me.
yeah,
So and it's like, okay, what stretch of time do I have to do that? But then also like
mhm,
in all retail, the customer comes first, so you got to get your orders out and stuff like that. So
yeah,
it's this juggling. But the cool thing about it is, it's like I don't have to work 70 hours. I don't have to work on the weekend.
right,
People in general understand that it might take an extra day. We're not Amazon, so
right,
and
yeah,
a lot of people are grateful for that, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, and I think there is, like you're saying, people know when they're ordering from a small business that's run by 1 or 2 people, like,
Mhm.
things aren't gonna come next day. It's nice when you can do that, like, it's great, but waiting 1 or 2 extra days to receive your order because you ordered from someone, who owns and runs their own business, like,
Mhm.
I'd much rather be patient and wait on people to send me it in the time frame that works for them. Like, it's like that going into it, and if you don't know
Mhm.
that going into it, then you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself.
There you go.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
because there's no like, again, it's that, like, I'm not going to sacrifice my well-being so that you can have a sticker,
Mhm.
14 hours earlier than if I send it when it works for me. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
there's that balance, and I think, same thing. It's like if I'm making someone a quilt or long arming for them, it's like it's gonna come in hopefully the 8 to 10 weeks I promise if it's a custom quilt, but
Mhm.
sometimes that doesn't work out, and most people are understanding. It's Etsy that's not understanding, it's like
Sure.
they're the one dinging my shop because this custom thing needed more time. I have a soapbox clearly, but we're not gonna talk about it anymore. Um, so I really appreciate shops, like I said, that you can tell the person is staying true to who they are, everything feels cohesive, and I think you're doing that, and it's so great, and I just want more people to find you, so I think
I
I've
really
shared
appreciate that.
yeah, I think I've shared about it a few times on my Instagram, and so
Mhm.
hopefully this episode will help more people find you because, it's just great to see people doing what they love and feeding their soul with the things that they love to do, and for me, I love to promote that because I think, like, again, we clearly both have come out of a hustle culture, out of that, push, push, push to achieve, to do something focused on what we love to do and the stuff that we love to be surrounded by that brings us joy.
Mhm.
And I think ultimately as humans, that's our biggest goal is to find peace of mind and to create joy. And whether it's for ourselves or with other people, like it's so important. It's so much more important than than we think it is or that we're told it is. I think it's everything. So I
For
love it.
sure. Yeah, no, it's nice and it's a relief,
Mhm.
to kind of be deconditioned to hustle all the time.
Yeah,
Does not mean we don't work hard. It just means we don't
exactly.
break ourselves in the process, you
Yep.
know. And like you said, it's creating joy and trying to spread it, for me it's like one fat quarter, one sticker at a time, right? If it
Yeah.
makes your day, you get an order, you wanted to find this fabric and I had it for you,
Yeah.
you know, like, if it makes your day, if it makes you your 5 minutes, then I did my job, which just gives you all the warm and fuzzies, right? You
Yep.
love to do that.
Exactly. Exactly. It's perfect. Ugh, so cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you and hearing your story, and hopefully people get out there. So, what is your website? So how can people yeah, how can people get to you?
For sure. My website is French Fry Quilt Co. So not company, co, French Fry Quilt Co.com.
Okay,
So
perfect.
yeah. And then as we mentioned before, I'm French Fry Quilter and French Fry Quilt Co. on Instagram. And I'm trying to get more onto Pinterest. That's coming soon. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this new like not new, but just like more of a push to be on Pinterest again because I think it was
Yeah,
kind of like a there was kind of a dip for a while and now it's like, "No, go get yourself on Pinterest." And I'm like, "What? Pinterest is back?" So that's exciting.
I know, it's really weird, and I was just like, "Yeah, exactly, like, this is a trend again? Okay, because
Yeah.
Pinterest just when we were in college, just started being a thing,
Yeah.
and then people used it, and then spammers kinda came into it and, like, affiliate marketing and stuff, which is still a thing,
Right.
but now people are like, "Okay, well, I did all those things on my Pinterest board, so I gotta go back," so
Yeah.
that's what it seems
Reclaiming
like
it.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like reclaiming it, which I love, and
Yeah.
I love to see that, so that's cool. So, well,
Mhm.
awesome. We'll look for your Pinterest, and we'll send hopefully so many people to buy all your things and
Oh, please do.
help you grow because it's I love to see it. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll keep in touch because I'm gonna keep ordering from you. So
Oh, sounds good. Anytime, let me know, DM me. That goes for anybody too. If you have any questions, just I'm there. So yeah,
awesome.
it was so fun to be on the show, and I really appreciate the chance to chat. It's been really fun and to chat about quilting and about life, and yeah. So
Yeah.
just thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.